Okay, welcome everybody tonight to our 5th Monday night health and wellness webinar with Rita Townsend and me, Deborah Viglione, as your host. Tonight we're going to get into brain health, and we're going to start right off because we've got a lot to share, and in the interest of time, I want to be quick. I'm going to talk fast, so you probably should get out a notebook. You can review this again on YouTube, but you might want to take some notes. Last episode, we talked about oxidative stress, and we talked about 3 areas that we need to focus on as we get older. We want optimal or high performance movement, high performance cognition, and high performance aesthetics. We want to stay looking young. So tonight we're going to focus on the cognitive health, and I'm going to pull my slides up. Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong one. Let's see, share screen. Hold on, share screen. And share. Okay, where is it? That's the hardest part. I always have so many things open. There we go. All right. Present. Okay, now I haven't figured out how to make this thing start from the beginning. Okay, so we want a healthy brain. So this is going to be a biohacker's guide. So we're going to go through a lot of things tonight about areas that you need to be aware of. It's a lot easier to prevent cognitive decline than it is to fix it. So that's the focus tonight, will be on prevention. I'm Deborah Viglione. I'm internal medicine by trade, but the last 20 or so years, I've been focused more on health and wellness as opposed to treating disease. I'm trying to keep people well as naturally as possible. So the incidence of Alzheimer's dementia in the US, these are 2019 statistics, is 5.8 million, which is 1 in 10 people, and 81% are in ages 75 and older. Dr. Bredesen put out a landmark book, I think it's been out for about 2 years now, on the end of Alzheimer's disease, and he likened it to a roof with many holes. The pharmaceutical industry has been so focused on trying to get 1 drug or 2 drugs that will treat this, and it's just not going to happen. All the diseases that we're seeing nowadays is requiring focusing on multiple parts of the body, multiple systems, because one thing isn't going to fix it. So just as if you had 2 holes in the roof and you put patch on that, you're still going to have a problem because the rest of the roof is going to leak. Oxidative stress and the mitochondrial dysfunction it causes or decay is behind all aging and disease, and all neurodegenerative disorders are caused at least in part by oxidative stress. Now, the video that we did last month focused on that, so I'm not going to get into that a whole lot. You can go back and review that. But these are the areas we're going to touch on tonight that when you focus on that, you will be reducing your oxidative stress some. The nutritional status, your exercise, your sleep, methylation, I'll go more into that, toxins, hormone levels, infections, genetics, and the gut microbiome. So genetics, I'll talk a little bit more about methylation. If you guys know me, you know that I'm really big on methylation. I have a couple videos out there on YouTube, Introduction to Methylation and Methylation Part 2, that you should really go look at. The ApoE status is something that everybody needs to get checked. 4.4 is the worst thing you can have, and symptoms usually begin in the early 50s. I see people in their 40s, maybe 45 on, that are suffering with some cognitive decline that have that genetic defect. 3.4, it means you got one from one parent and you're still at higher risk. Symptoms begin in the 50s or 60s. And basically this gene, through different things it does, increases brain inflammation and oxidative stress. There are a bunch of other genes. Dr. Bredesen's book goes into it a little bit more, but I'm not going to get into that tonight. So one thing that you want to do, and listen, I know most doctors won't do these tests. You can, I don't know if you have to become a member or not, but Life Extension publishes a magazine. They carry a line of nutritional supplements, and you can order labs through them. I think they have a physician that talks to you. They're very reasonable. So this is a way you can get these tests done. You want to check at minimal on your methylation pathways, the MTHFR gene, which is C677T, and A1298C, and get your ApoE checked. All right, so what's methylation? Fancy word, but it's just a carbon molecule with 3 hydrogens attached, and it just jumps on and off things. And when it jumps on and off, it turns things on and off. So it's super important to actually make DNA and make your proteins. It's needed to make the neurotransmitters, which we'll talk about more tonight. And B12 is the initial cofactor in driving this pathway. And that's why I'm so big on giving people methylated B12. And folate has to be methylated. So folic acid won't get into your nervous system. It has to be methylated to get in there. And I talked about the MTHFR that you want to have checked. So this is huge. So B12 or methylcobalamin is the active form of B12 that will actually do the work. It has to be methylated to be active. And myelin is just the protein coat that surrounds the nerves, and people with MS lose their myelin, and that's why their nervous system doesn't work well. It's helpful in neuronal lipids. The nervous system is all fat, and that's one of the reasons that some of this lowering cholesterol is causing problems, because the brain is full of cholesterol. That's how it functions in fats, and that's why keto and the diets now are focusing on healthy fats. You have to have good lipids in your brain. And B12 helps in regeneration of your nerves. Axonal nerves are the ones that carry the message from the brain to the body. It's neuroprotective, and it's crucial for balance. When people have problems with their balance, they often have a deficiency of B12. And they have shown B12 supplementation with or without methylation problems to be helpful in Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, neuropathic disorders, and peripheral neuropathy. I treat peripheral neuropathy with high doses of B12. And I said at the beginning, it is the beginning of the methylation pathway. So it's crucial to have high levels of B12 when you're treating that pathway. Vitamin B6 or P5P is super important. And these two go together. If you treat B12 and you don't have an adequate level of B6 or vice versa, you can actually cause problems. So you need all of the Bs, but particularly these two when you're talking about the nervous system. It may help keep that blood-brain barrier intact. Deficiencies are associated with the amyloid plaque that is everybody's focusing on in Alzheimer's because they find that amyloid in there. It's an important cofactor in making your neurotransmitters: serotonin, norepinephrine, epinephrine, melatonin, dopamine, and GABA. Those are all really important neurotransmitters that have different functions, and you have to have the B6 to do that. Again, it's important in that coat that lines all of the nerves, the myelin. It reduces homocysteine, which is, so does B12, by the way, and folate. But homocysteine is an inflammatory amino acid that gets high when you're deficient in these, and you want to get that down. It's also important, very important in preventing and treating peripheral neuropathy. So these are all things that you have to have tested. And your doctor may say, well, I'm not going to do it. So you go to Life Extension and get it done. So you want your serum B12, your RBC folate, and your serum folate initially. If your serum folate is high and your RBC folate's low, that's telling you that the folate is not getting into your cells. That's why you check them at the beginning. And you should really get all your Bs checked, but just checking a blood level isn't good enough. You need to get into the cell and see what's going on. And Spectra Cell Labs has a reasonable panel that will look at your intracellular levels of a ton of vitamins. So real good lab tests to have done. And they take some insurances, not all, but usually it'll help in part pay for your labs. Now we're going to get into hormones. So hormones are crucially important to the brain, and unfortunately, and I can't get into this now, but I will in a future webinar, we've been scared away from hormones incorrectly, and they're nothing to be afraid of. When they're done the right way with the right dose, they're extremely beneficial. But estrogen, estradiol is the important one that we're talking about that's beneficial for the brain. Testosterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, thyroid, and growth hormone. This just shows a graph of what might happen based on statistics on what happens with Alzheimer's. If you think about it, all this happens when people go through menopause and andropause and they're losing their hormones. So theoretically, if we replace them, would we see the cognitive decline that we're seeing? Because in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative scared most women off of hormones. There was a 70% reduction in hormone use then, and it hasn't gone back up to normal. So that could be in part why we're seeing 1 in 10 people with dementia. So this is definitely proven that estrogen deficiency, testosterone deficiency, melatonin, all are causes of memory loss. Pregnenolone is another hormone you're going to want to have tested, growth hormone, and particularly low thyroid hormone So estrogen in the brain that has been shown to improve the mini mental status exam. It improves dementia symptoms, improves brain blood flow. And that's crucially important. You've got to get blood flow to the brain. That's why atherosclerosis is not good. EEGs are improved in women with Alzheimer's disease that are on estrogen. And it's transdermal estradiol, which is the bioidentical estradiol, not the horse's urine or Premarin that decreased amyloid plaque in ApoE4 carriers. It also increases mood and Alzheimer's disease. Now we're going to talk about brain shrinkage. What you see on the right is typical for an Alzheimer's disease brain. Sorry, I'm trying to go so fast. So growth hormone levels are significantly decreased in people with Alzheimer's disease. Lower levels are associated with worse cognitive impairment, and brain size is definitely correlated to the level of growth hormone. That's another one you want to have checked. It's an IGF-1. I did not put that in there. IGF-1. And good growth hormone levels are associated with increased cerebral blood flow, shorter reaction time. So when you're driving a car, you're going to be able to react and brake. Increased glucose utilization in the brain, so that shows the brain's working. It's got energy. It increases neurogenesis, which making your nerves, replacing the old cells. It protects you from the beta amyloid, and there's increased motor and processing speed in older people, and that's super important. Melatonin, now this is an easy one. Decreased levels are seen in people with Alzheimer's and loss of the normal rhythm, because the melatonin should come out as the sun goes down and then should fade as the light comes on in the morning. So if you're having problems with your circadian rhythm, the best thing you can do is go out and see the sunrise. Treatment with melatonin improves your sleep in Alzheimer's disease, and it also improves sundown. Sundowning is a phenomenon. A lot of people in nursing homes and dementia, they get very disoriented. They start to hallucinate and sometimes become combative as the sun goes down, and treatment with melatonin improves that. It's also neuroprotective against oxidative stress and that beta amyloid plaque. And typically they're using doses between 3 and 10 milligrams. Now pregnenolone is a mother hormone. It's made from cholesterol, so cholesterol goes into pregnenolone. So if you're on a cholesterol lowering drug such as a statin, you're going to probably find your pregnenolone levels are low, which is not good. All of the other adrenal hormones, cortisol, DHEA, and the sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, are all made from pregnenolone, which is why they call it the mother hormone. But it's interesting because the brain has 25 to 35% higher levels than the blood does. Now, I looked considerably for data because this is important. Dr. Bredesen talks about in his book. I measure it with people. I replace it. They really think it has an important function in memory and cognition. However, the studies haven't been the greatest. So we know it's important because it's up there, and you'd be surprised how many people I find low levels are, because just stress will lower it, because this is used to make cortisol, and when your cortisol's up because you're stressed, you're going to steal this away. So very important to have that level checked. Now, hypothyroidism is probably what's extremely common, and it's the most frequent reversible cause of dementia, and it's highly overlooked by most physicians, and that's because all they check is a TSH. So a decreased serum T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone, 17% in pre-dementia and 26% of people with Alzheimer's disease and ischemic dementia have just a treatable problem, which is decreased T3. So they know T3 enhances your memory, it increases your brain blood flow, it increases arousal, attention, wakefulness, brain excitability. We see increases of glucose consumption, again, meaning the brain is working, it's doing what it needs to. There's decreased amyloid beta, it reduces inflammation, and it improves electricity that's going on between the nerves as they're talking to each other. So when you go and you want a thyroid, insist or find another doctor, get all of these levels checked: free T4, free T3, total T3, reverse T3. When the reverse T3 is up, you're actually storing hormone in an inactive state, so it's not good. You want to have those in the normal range. TSH is definitely not adequate. There are tons of people out there with normal TSH, and they're actually hypothyroid. The other two are useful in looking for autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So now we're going to move into common neurotoxins. And these are extremely common, especially to us on the Gulf Coast because of the oil drilling industry. Early on, when they would strike oil, they would plug that oil with a mercury plug. Now that's since been outlawed, but they're still out there in the ocean. So we have a lot of mercury in the Gulf of Mexico, and our bigger fish such as amberjack and grouper and tuna are loaded with mercury. I hope that's getting better over time. The coal industry also, just in the process of exhaust or whatever, it rains down in the rain and gets into our water supply. So mercury is a big one. The silver fillings, I know that most dentists have stopped using those. And mercury is no longer put in the vaccines, but it was when we were all getting vaccinated. Lead is everywhere. The predominant source was really through gasoline, but the problem is it's out there and it's in our soil. So anytime the soil is dug up, new construction's going on, sites are being excavated, the lead gets aerosolized, and most of us have a pretty decent level of it, especially if you're 65 and older. Arsenic is coming through contaminated water, treated wood. Organophosphates are the most common pesticide used in agriculture, and at the bottom I've got 90% of apple peels have at least 2 pesticides on it. PCBs are in our food. Toluene is in our gas, and every time you pump gas, you're inhaling that. So there's loads of other toxicities, and I'm not going to get a whole lot into it, but believe me, they're out there. And if you're interested, there are labs that do check for those. This is a newer cause of brain dysfunction, the electromagnetic waves. And if you look at electromagnetic frequency, but if you look at these two people at the bottom, you can see how hot and red his face is after just spending 15 minutes on a cell phone. So when you can, don't use Bluetooth, talk on your speaker, get the cell phone away from your head. All right, so now we're going to talk about the gut, which is commonly known as the second brain. Just for fun, I looked at PubMed and I put in oxidative stress in the brain, and I got over 31,000 hits. When I looked for articles on the brain and the microbiome, I got over 3,000. And then when I just put in dementia and the gut, I got 168 articles. So it's a big deal. And the gut is responsible for, I've heard, up to 80% of our neurotransmitter synthesis, but serotonin is 95%. And that's our feel-good hormone. But the other ones, norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine is kind of the motivating hormone. And GABA is the inhibitory one because you got to have a balance. You can't have your brain too excited. And that's all pretty much made in the gut. So we have to have a healthy gut. And this is, to the left is a healthy gut. You see these little blocks or squares, those are the tight junctions. Now that's only one cell layer thick. And that's keeping the barrier intact so things don't get through that we don't want to get through. On the right is the leaky gut. And that means bacteria, viruses, molds, chemicals, toxins can get into our bloodstream and then wreak havoc in our body. This is the blood-brain barrier, very similar to the gut, tight junctions in the brain. So if your gut is leaky, you can count on it, your brain's going to be leaky. So Dr. Bredesen's book shows that he's found in autopsy studies Lyme, other tick-borne infections, mold, bacteria. That P. gingivalis is bacteria from the mouth actually getting in the brain because our gut is leaky. Viruses, and one that's very commonly associated with is the herpes simplex virus. And I can't get into this, but wheat gluten is one of the factors that's causing leaky gut. And these are excellent books if you want to get into that. So that we've got to get our gut intact. That's a huge focus for everybody if you want to be healthy, even from, just trying to stay healthy and not get cancer or some other dreaded disease, but just keep your brain healthy. So at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Rita Townsend. She's my partner in this health and wellness series. We're business partners and friends, and I'm going to have her take it away because I took a lot of time.
Great. So I think I'm going to need you to share your slides from this point on, Deb.
Okay.
Okay, you ready to go? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Viglione. My job now is to turn all of this around, all this amazing information, and tell you how you can achieve this. So thanks, Dr. Viglione, for telling us where to get those testing measurements done. That would be definitely the first step. But it's a lot of information. And what we want to do now is really take you into a few steps that you can do now that are very easy, that you can simplify and start incorporating into your lifestyle to really help with cognitive decline. So we're going to start with nootropics, and we are going to look at nootropics and the ingredients in nootropics. The one that you're looking at on your screen now is a good one, and we're going to go into these ingredients individually in just a few minutes. But a nootropic is really a great way to add some of these all-important ingredients into your lifestyle, but also to enhance your brain function. It can not only enhance your cognitive function, but can also help to stimulate energy. And it's a very healthy combination that we're going to look at here. So let's go on to looking at a diet, and we'll come back to the individual ingredients in the nootropics. So the diet that we're going to look at is very simply some basic nutrition. I want to look at the diet. There we go. Okay, so this is really, really a good diet for cognitive health. It's called the MIND diet, and it's based on an acronym for Mediterranean Interventional Neurodegenerative Delay Diet. And there's a lot of information out there. You can check Mayo's website for a lot of really good information on this diet and some great recipes. But as you can see, this is probably part of a really good diet anyway. But there are some very specific things in this diet that we know will help improve your cognitive health. So check out the information on the Mayo Mind diet. And as you can see, it's a great diet, and it doesn't really keep you from enjoying some of the fun things that you'd like to have in your diet, also like a little bit of wine and a little bit of dark chocolate also. So as Dr. Viglione mentioned a minute ago, that we know that oxidative stress is the #1 underlying issue in aging. And we want to talk about some of the products and some of the combinations of these ingredients that you can start incorporating into a healthy lifestyle. And here's a list of our favorites. Okay, so based on the research, what you're looking at is this NRF2 activation is known to reduce your oxidative stress by 40% in just 30 days. It is a nootropic, and it contains bacopa. The second part in this series of these products is called a NRF1. The NRF1 actually helps to repair and produce new mitochondria. And another underlying pillar of good health, we know that mitochondria declines as we age. It's very important for energy, but we need that energy for cognitive support. So it all plays together. An NRF1 activation reduces the mitochondria dysfunction, and it also contains an important element, which is CoQ10. The next product in this little list that I want to share about is something called NAD, which is the third element here. NAD, if you're not familiar with it, is the most abundant molecule in the human body. And without it, we simply die. There's a massive body of research on the NAD that actually the research began in 1906. And now, as we understand the importance of NAD, not only does it improve cognition, but it also can improve things like our oh boy, cardiovascular health and overall functioning of all three of these things together. And so what we did is combine these three products with a nootropic beverage, which we're going to go into some of those ingredients one by one here. And we're also going to touch on a little bit about the importance of omega. So we're going to touch very quickly on these ingredients and what we're calling this nootropic, because this nootropic has everything to do with your cognitive health. So first one is pine bark extract. And we know that, whoops.
That's okay. I can back up. There's pine
Okay,
bark.
okay, there you go. All right, sorry about this, guys. All right, so let's go back to, okay, so let's go back to the first one. Sorry, Deb.
It's okay.
Okay, so we want to go back into the the ingredients in the nootropic. First one is what is DMAE, which is a precursor of choline, which increases acetylcholine in the brain. It's an important neurotransmitter, as Dr. Viglione mentioned earlier. It also functions as an antioxidant in the brain, a free radical scavenger. It improves mood, emotional state in humans and animals, and facilitates the induction of lucid dreams. Now, those lucid dreams are actually your REM sleep, which is really important for your deep, restful sleep. And although the studies have failed to show increased levels of acetylcholine in the brain, there's no large long-term studies yet that have been done on this particular product. So the next ingredient that we want to look at is simply caffeine and the brain. So we know that there are some benefits of caffeine. It can give some increased alertness, certainly upregulate our mood a little bit, reaction time and memory, and it does increase the concentration of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. So what we want to caution here is the overuse of caffeine. What we want to look for is a product that gives you some very powerful combination of ingredients and not overload with caffeine. We want to give you an alternative to some unhealthy things that we tend to go to. So L-theanine, okay, the L-theanine amino acid crosses that all-important blood-brain barrier, as Dr. Viglione mentioned before, increases the synthesis of the GABA, which we also know is an important neurotransmitter. I love this. It decreases anxiety and agitation. So oftentimes as people age and we see things like cognitive decline, it's not only about memory and focus and recall. Oftentimes it really is a mood and there's additional anxiety and agitation. The synergistic effect with caffeine helps to boost the brain function. It decreases serotonin. The serotonin is the feel-good hormone, which we need a really good balance of that. Increases the NE. Okay.
That's norepinephrine.
Yes. Okay, so, and I love this too, increases the brain alpha waves, which keeps us calm, but awake. Very important. So what we're getting to is a balance of all of these ingredients that combined together become very, very powerful. And quercetin, which is a well-known neuroprotective, also it is a free radical scavenger. And there are studies that show that it actually has an anti-Parkinson effect and improves motor movement. It also protects, it has neuroprotective against that amyloid beta that Dr. Viglione mentioned, and has been shown to improve memory in animal models. It is the most studied of all the flavonoids, and it has just on its own, it has a great effect, but we're going to show you how to combine all of that.
The other thing, if I'll interrupt here, I've been looking at this a lot because of the current status of what's going on. This is an amazing, amazing product, whatever it is, bioflavonoid, unbelievable. You guys should look it up, everything it does.
Okay, so we're going to show you how to put all that together in a second here. And green tea, we know that there is some benefit from the caffeine in green tea. And it also has an antioxidant effect, which we certainly need. But it also contains L-theanine, and it is an anti-inflammatory. And finally, the pine bark extract. Okay, pine bark extract has also the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, and it increases the attention span, increases episodic and spatial working memory, improves mental flexibility and planning. Okay, so all these things together are really important ingredients, but what we want to do is show you in a minute how to combine all of those. I want to just underscore that taken individually, there is benefit, but what you want to look at for are these powerful combinations of ingredients that address a multitude of a multitude of issues rather than an individual issue. So last, we want to look at the importance of omega. Okay, so omega-3. I really want to jump to the next slide. Now, when we talk about neurohacker benefits, the omega-3 is rich in EPA and the DHA, supports cognitive health. But what we also know about the brain is that the brain is a very demanding organ and that weighs only about 2% of our total body weight, yet consumes 20% of the resources of our energy, our oxygen, our nutrients, and it works around the clock, even when we're sleeping. So the brain is largely fat. 25% of the brain fat is DHA, and DHA is an omega-3 acid that is the primary structural component of the human brain. And 90% of all omega-3s are in DHA. So omega-3 is vital to a healthy brain, and in addition supports your cognitive health. But it protects and supports your cardiovascular health and a healthy immune system. So one other thing I want to mention about a really good omega-3. You want to look for a really pure, high quality omega-3. We have an omega that we can share with you that is fished in mercury-free ocean, and Dr. Viglione highlighted the importance of that. But it's very deep, cold water ocean, which causes the fish to produce additional fat. So what you want to look for are mercury-free fish from deep, cold ocean, which provides a pure omega, and a pure, high-quality omega will have no fishy aftertaste and no fishy smell. And if it has a fishy smell, it's not a high quality omega, and chances are it's not going to do what you want it to do, but it's also could be rancid. So lastly, when we look at the brain, it needs exercising. The brain, people tend to live longer when they are proactively exercising their brains. So here's a list of some of the things that you might think about doing in addition to all the nutritional support and all the research that we've shared tonight, just to keep the brain active and healthy. Some of these things you might already do for fun, but they're really great to keep as a part of your lifestyle, to really keep your brain active and healthy. So what we tried to share tonight is a lot of the research, a lot of the medical side of cognitive health, and what happens when we begin to start experiencing that cognitive decline. There are ways to measure it, there are ways to test for it, and ways to assess for it. So we want to encourage you to do that, and we want to also encourage you to do some of the other things that we've shared tonight. Be aware of the toxins, eliminate toxins, feed your brain in every way that you can feed your brain, with nutrition, with lifestyle, reducing oxidative stress, mitochondria, and the all essential NAD that we know is our longevity gene, exercise your brain with some of the tips that we've provided, and get quality sleep and get your gut healthy. The good news is that there's a lot of information that we've shared tonight, and we're going to give you our contact information because we know you're going to have a lot of questions. In addition to that, I highly encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, Dr. Deborah Viglione, and I have an additional YouTube channel under my name, and you can have the replay and take notes and really get some really valuable information that you can turn around and use and to incorporate in your lifestyle, to really start becoming aware of your cognitive health, becoming aware of the issues of cognitive decline, and some of the things that you can start doing now. So send us some questions, ask us, because I know you're going to have a lot. We've shared a lot tonight, and check out the replay on the YouTube, and then we can start answering questions, and you can start that journey to better cognitive health. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Viglione. We shared a lot. I'm sure you learned a lot. Review it, take notes, and be active.
Okay. See you a month from today.
Okay.